Hi, this is Eric. I'm with programwitheric.com. Today we're going to be interviewing Azat, but I also have a guest interview here, Jeff with emberscreencasts.com. Hey, Jeff.
Hey.
So he'll be helping today with this interview with Azat. So, Azat, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? And we'll start with that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Azat. You can find me online at azat.co, azat.co. Short byline, I published several books on Node.js and JavaScript. If you're into Node.js, one of my most popular books is called Practical Node.js. It was #1 on Amazon. If you search for Node.js right now, there's another book which is free. That book is #1. Basically, that's my elevator pitch. I also work full-time as a technology fellow at Capital One, small technology company, as I call it.
So yeah, you've written a lot of books. You've written a lot about Node.js. And I noticed recently you have a React Indie bundle that you're doing right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a cool project. So basically, I went to HTML5 Dev Conference here in San Francisco, and the entire conference was basically like half of the conference was React.js is awesome, another half of the conference was ES6 is awesome, right? And and that's good because I'm writing a book on React.js with Manning. So I'm like, yes, this is the validation. I'm doing everything right. And then I've listened to a few folks there at the conference, and I'm like, wow, there are a lot of smart self-published authors. So let's bundle up. I have a course on Udemy. So basically, it started with 2 or 3 authors, and then we ended up with 6 authors. We put together 4 ebooks and 19 hours of online videos. So that was like a huge bundle. And then people also chipped in consultancy. So like you can get a free online time with those authors. So that was cool. So we did sale throughout we did the sale for 1 week, and we got almost 300 customers or almost 300 buyers, and that ended up bringing us over $30,000 in 1 week.
Wow.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So that's a good holiday bonus, and it's definitely React is something definitely people crave and people love and they're passionate about. And the deal was good. The deal was like you would get all that value for like 60 or 70% off.
Yeah, that's great. Now, the React book you're doing, that's going to be sometime next year, and that's going to be published through Manning. You're also an A-Press publisher as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm doing
Oh.
I'm doing both. I'm having 2 publishers right now because they're slow. And I need 2 publishers to publish more books.
So
That's great.
A-Press just couldn't publish them fast enough for you?
Exactly, yeah. So the new book with A-Press, which is coming this year, probably in the next
Uh-huh.
couple of weeks, it's called Full Stack JavaScript. That's an updated edition of my very first book on JavaScript, which is rapid prototyping with JS. I've
hmm
updated all the versions. Now it's Node version 5. It's recent MongoDB. I have also I'm doing the new thing. I've recorded screencasts for all the projects in this book. So it's almost like an online course. It's not a book. So people can go to YouTube, they can watch a screencast, they can read, they can go to GitHub. So it's like total immersion. And then with Manning, I like I wanted to try working with Manning because it's a different editor, different structure. So my goal is to become a better writer. And the Manning team is amazing, and they even have a Markdown workflow right now, and the book is coming next year. But the MeEP is available right now. MeEP is their early access, and I have a code right now. Probably it's not going to work by the time this episode is ready, but I'm going to pitch it anyway. It's ML Mardan, MLMARDAN, for the MeEP access.
Oh, that's
Cool.
awesome.
So
All right.
you chose Manning specifically because you wanted to work through their process. When you started working with A-Press, like obviously you liked them because you kept on publishing books with them. But did they just come and offer you something, or you did a lot of research and decided that A-Press was who you wanted to publish with?
When I did my very first traditionally published book,
Yes.
A-Press offered me good terms, and that's what I went with. I submitted my proposal to Pragmatic and a few other publishers, but I ended up working with A-Press.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had the offer with Pact Publishing,
Mm-hmm.
but I asked around other programmers, and the quality of their books, they didn't perceive it good. That's a good quality.
Is,
You're
I'll
laughing.
admit, Azad, actually, the book, I'm actually, the one reason where I'm so interested about your book publishing as well is because I'm actually starting to write a book, nearly done with it, and I'm going with Pact, so, but we're going to try to keep high quality on this book, so definitely working really hard on it.
Yeah, keep the bar high.
Hey, you're guaranteed to be above average for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't listen to this, do they?
It's just a different model. I think it's Walmart versus Whole Foods, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking more like flea market.
Yeah,
Yeah. But got to start somewhere. So
exactly. And and make sure you have like external proofreaders. So one funny story is like when I was doing book with A-Press, they sent me final proofs. And so basically it's PDF that about to go to production print. That's it. There would be no changes. That's one thing that bothers me with traditional publishing. Once the book is done, it's very hard to get any changes. It's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
Versus self-publishing.
Yeah, each change is like $10,000.
Yeah, it's insane. So basically, I'm like, based on my previous experience with self-publishing, I'm like, I know there would be typos, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, and I had 5 editors at A-Press, right? I have like a lot of people looking at the manuscript. So I sent it to my virtual assistant, and she's not even like, English is not her native language, but she found like a few hundred different formatting and typos.
Wow.
It's actually a really good idea. Like, send it to someone who English isn't their native language. And so, like, they're usually more up on the grammar. Because, like, it's harder for them to just, like, smooth over things that aren't written correctly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm working with someone else locally here that's double checking some of my grammar, things like that, and I'm going to check with them when I get close to the end of the book to also go back through and make sure I'm doing good grammar. That's a good tip, though. Moving on a little bit, let's talk a little bit about React. I know you're writing a book about it through Manning. You just said you just went through the React Indie bundle. Is there? Can you give me some reasons why you think people start using it? I've heard a lot of good things about React in the last, I don't know, about 6 months to a year. Everyone been talking about it a lot.
Yeah, React is super hot right now. If I remember, I looked a couple of weeks ago at Google Trends. It's like it's getting close to Angular, basically, which is very interesting. I think there are a lot of theories why it's good, right? I think the major selling point is that it's developer friendly. Basically, you can write code in a nicer way, which is easier to read and easier to scale and debug and test, right? So it's a next generation UI framework. Basically, we had jQuery like 5 or 7 years ago. Then we started having Backbone, Knockout, those minimalistic MVC kind of MVC-like frameworks. Then Angular came. It was like, oh, this is amazing. It has bidirectional flow. It does so many things. But people started like, oh, this is kind of complex. I have to learn a new language and the templates and ng directives, and there are like a million ways it could bite me in the tail. And now React is coming. I think it's new generation frameworks, and Facebook and Instagram. Yeah.
Your point about it being easier to learn than Angular, I think, is a really good one, because from what I've heard, it's much easier to work React into an existing application, like a server-side application. than either Angular or Ember. Is that correct?
Yeah, the components, isomorphic / universal JavaScript, you can render it on the server. The key difference is it's a unidirectional flow. That's why it's easier to render on the server versus bidirectional flow in Angular. And it's easier to test, better for SEO if you have the rendering, better for performance if you have the server-side rendering. So kind of we're coming the full circle, right? We started with server-side rendering, then we went single-page application, now we're back to server-side rendering for the first page loads, and then we plug SPAs.
So you're saying that React can already do server-side rendering for the first page load?
Yeah, it's very easy. It's like if you have Express.js, which most of us do on a server, then it's like 5 or 6 lines of code. You just import the React component. You can use browserify, something like that, and then you render it, basically, and it's HTML string, so it's beautiful.
I know that's pretty interesting. I know Glimmer is trying to do that on the Ember.js side, and they're
with fast
somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know Ember does a lot more than React. And that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. So I've been hearing a lot more about Redux and React Router lately. And so it seems like React started as this UI layer, as this view layer. And while Ember tried to be everything. But slowly React is grabbing more and more parts through their ecosystem, like through Redux. Do you think it will ever end up being as comprehensive as the Ember ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it will stay lean and thin, just the React itself, but the ecosystem will provide many options. For example, you can use Redux, you can use Reflex, you can use Flow. So there are a lot of data libraries. There are a lot of router libraries, right? A lot of testing libraries. So I think it will be more like Backbone, where you have a very foundational framework and then you add stuff into it versus having something comprehensive as Ember or Angular.
So instead of having a stack, you'll get like the core, which is really solid and really tight. And then you have like a tree of stacks of various qualities.
Right. So it's like more flexible and dependent on the projects, you would pick whatever you want. Even from going from version 0.13 to 0.14, you already see that change. So what ended up happening, they used to have the DOM library inside of React, right? So it was more tailored to the web application. So what they did in version 0.14, they took that DOM library outside. So basically they decoupled, and now React is even smaller, and you can use it with mobile, you can use it with D3, with other rendering targets, not just with DOM.
Interesting. And that's is that how they got React Native, or is that a separate code base?
Yeah. So basically you have React, which is core, and then you have DOM, you have native, you have canvas, and those are rendering targets. So you write your component once, you describe your UI component once, and then you choose different targets for the rendering. So basically you can use your components on different platforms, different targets.
Interesting. Speaking of Ember, do you have any views on the Ember.js versus React versus Angular debate? I mean, overall?
That's always a good topic. It's like versus. Like people love it. It's a great way to start religious wars. Like, my thing is better. No, my thing is better. I have limited experience with Ember and limited experience with Angular. Based on what I've heard, Angular 2 is completely different from Angular 1. It uses TypeScript, and they borrowed a lot of concept from React. For example, virtual DOM, the unidirectional flow, and other things. And I've also heard good things about the next version of Ember, that it's backwards compatible, unlike Angular 1 and 2. Right?
Yeah.
And it also has virtual DOM, right? So I think Ember and Angular, they saw that the thing works really well in React, and they're like, okay, so let's...
Yeah, and I really like that stealing is going on in all directions. Like React router is based off the Ember router, and Angular CLI is a port of Ember CLI. And so I love that, like, even if Ember doesn't win, like, I'm in the Ember camp, but if Ember doesn't win, our best ideas will end up in React and Angular.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
What camp are you in, Eric? So we
Ember,
have
definitely.
Ember. Okay, so we have
Yeah,
two Ember plus React.
Although I definitely want to learn
I'm so
React.
glad that you guys gave us the virtual DOM and the unidirectional data binding, because that's definitely making Ember a lot better. And so, do you think there are any other core concepts in React that Ember or Angular could benefit from adopting?
JSX. For those listeners who don't know what the JSX is, it's this weird looking XML like syntax inside of your JavaScript. And it's really, really messes with minds, especially when you first look at it.
For the Ember people, basically put your handlebars inside your JavaScript. That's JSX, right?
Yeah. It looks like that, but it's not really HTML inside of JavaScript, but it looks like that, yes.
Is that your serious answer?
Kind of. I was turned off by JSX when I first looked at React, but then I started playing with it and writing some code. It really made sense to me because if you think about it, it's like when we're writing UI, when we're writing front end, we're not really, it's not a separation of concerns when we jump from HTML to JavaScript to CSS, right? It's really just one functionality, it's one piece, it should be one file, should be one language, right? So I think that's a great improvement for developers, having this literal syntax that converts to JavaScript. So basically we're writing HTML in JavaScript and CSS in JavaScript. So finally we can write the whole UI front end in JavaScript in one language.
I guess organizationally, Ember is moving towards that because though we're keeping it as separate handlebars, CSS, and JavaScript files, we are going to start putting them all in the same folder. So you have like the folder for this component, and then you have your JavaScript file, your handlebars template, and your CSS file in that folder, rather than having them separated out.
The pod structure.
Right.
Right. Very interesting. So going along with that, these different frameworks, do you have what JavaScript frameworks do you think everyone should start learning, just in general, Azat?
I think Backbone is still a good start. That was my first book 3 years ago. I used Backbone. I think it's a good start. It doesn't have a lot of magic. It doesn't have DSL, domain-specific language like ngDirects. So it's just straight up JavaScript, a little bit enhancement.
I'm going to go ahead and push back on that because when I tried learning Backbone, there's very little there, but you also, there's so many ways it can go wrong. And there's no support for you when it does go wrong. So when I tried to learn Backbone, I was just sort of guessing did I remember those 10 things I'm supposed to do? And usually I didn't. And it's the same reason that I found it more difficult to learn C than I did to learn Python. Because although C is a simpler language, it's much closer to the machine, there's less going on, you have to remember so much more. There's so many more ways that it can go wrong.
Do you agree, Azat?
I agree with this point of view as well. I think there are two camps of thoughts and two approaches. That boils down to the personality, just the personality of a developer. One approach is start low level and then keep adding stuff as you need it. And another approach is start with something that already provide a structure, already provide some functionality features like Rails, for example, or like Ember or like Angular. And then if you don't need it, don't use it or ignore it or subtract from it, right? So it brings me back to a little story. Like when I learned Rails, like it was wonderful, right? It does so many things for you, but then it has so much magic. So I'm like, I was lost most of the time. And then I switched to Node.js. It was like so minimalistic, so low level. I'm like, wow, I understand what I'm doing. So I'm starting from like low level and then building on top of that. So that's my personal approach. And I think both are valid. It just depends on like a personality.
Yeah, I think
if you're a
right
beginner,
with it being the personality, because I love Rails. I found Node very difficult for the same reason that you love it.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the beginner and how they learn and what they think.
Yeah, so if you
figure out which
prefer
one
Rails over Node, start with Ember. If you prefer Node over Rails, start with Backbone.
Or if you like Sinatra, then you might want to look at Express.js and React.
Well, if you like Sinatra, then maybe React.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good summary.
So we're gonna move on to a little bit of more business types questions. I know you're pretty busy, Azat. So I know you've done a lot of Kickstarter type projects. You've funded some things with Kickstarter. How has that been, and how well has it been to reach people?
Kickstarter is great, especially once they dropped the Amazon payment, which was horrible. Amazon just couldn't approve me, so I went and used Gumroad as a Kickstarter. So basically my first Kickstarter campaign, quote unquote, was on Gumroad, and I manually install updates and I had to put a description. That was really good because it validated the idea before I actually started doing anything. That was the Mongoose course. Mongoose is a database library for Node and MongoDB. That was like a year ago, before the New Year's. And so basically I pre-sold my course to like 100 to 250 people, collected money, and then I started recording the course. So I definitely recommend it to anyone.
Nice. How did you generate the interest in the pre-orders?
I have social media following. I have email lists. So first I notify the subscribers, and then
through years.
Through years of work, yeah.
yeah. That's the grind. There is no substitute for the grind. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
just went. Go ahead.
Another example of a failed Kickstarter campaign was the Mongoose book. So I'm like, I have this course, so maybe I can just write a book, right? Maybe people would be interested, and then it failed miserably. Basically, it was like 200 instead of like 2,000 goal. But the third campaign was the React campaign, and it just skyrocketed. I had the goal of $2,000. It reached in 1 month. It reached $6,000. So basically, 300% over the goal.
That's great.
Yeah,
I know. There's a lot of different ways to reach. I mean, as you're a teacher there and trying to figure out what people want and trying to deliver what they want, I definitely think Kickstarter is a good way to get some interest and then validate your idea before you get out there and try to put it out there. It's an interesting way. I just thought it's an interesting topic there. Is there you've been also a pretty prolific blogger. You've been blogging quite a bit on your site for many years. Is that right?
Yes. webablog.com.
Yeah, so you've been writing about all sorts of different topics. So talking a little bit about some soft skills you write about occasionally. So you wrote an article about 5 hacks to getting a job of your dreams to live a happier life. Can you explain some of those principles?
Yeah, that's a good essay, and I also did it as a small self-published mini book. So I'll be happy to share the code for free download with your listeners as well.
Oh, wow, yeah, that'd be great.
Maybe you can put it in the notes. So basically, this is the way for me to kind of share what worked for me and kind of like help other people who may be at their level where they're junior developers or medium level developers and they want to go next step, right? Maybe get that dream job. Maybe they're not really satisfied with their career right now.
Mm-hmm.
One number one advice, obviously, is write a book. I think everyone should write a book. It's so easy right now to write a book, right? Just go to LeapUp, go to GitBooks, and there's no excuse. You can write a book in a weekend, right? It doesn't have to.
And I noticed
300.
once I started publishing things, for me it's screencasts rather than blog posts or books. Then when you're interviewing for a job, then people already know you. Like they are able to find you and say, before the interview begins, they can tell that you're qualified. And so the interview is a simple, like, do we like each other?
Yeah. Interview, you just talk about weather, sports, and where you live. Yeah, no technical questions. You send your GitHub profile, you send your screencasts, send your books, and that's it. That's done. Yeah. And now, yeah, screencasts are great, and screencasts, they actually require sometimes less work, and they're better for people because it's easier to consume. So definitely, if that's your medium, do screencasts, do courses, online courses. Another easy hack is to just submit to conferences. You can submit to any conference. There is no restrictions. Just come up with a cool idea, some interesting topic, and you might be invited to speak at the conference. Some conferences even pay for your flights, for your hotel stay. So it's a great way to kind of like put your name out there, and then maybe you will meet someone who's hiring. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of companies that are hiring, but it's great to have that on your profile as well, on your resume.
Hey, Azat, how many conferences do you go to a year?
I started going more just because it's part of my job at Capital One, to evangelize and contribute and to spread the word. This year, probably I went to, I don't know, maybe like 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is not a huge number, but I started my work in June, so.
And then you could always submit conference talks at each one of those if you wanted to, and just start building up your name. I know you've spoken at a lot of conferences, so that's a good idea.
Yeah. And
You
can submit 2 or 3 talks.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Has speaking at conferences boosted your publishing career as well? How have those fed off of each other?
I would like to think that it's easy to get the speaking engagement once you're a published author. But I don't really know what's happening in the minds of the people who look at the proposals. So maybe they don't even look at the bios, right? Because they have so many proposals. It's definitely good to meet people, to learn something new. For example, if you cannot afford like a couple $1,000 to go to a conference and you're invited to speak there, right? So that's a great way to be able to go there and learn some cutting edge technology, some cool stuff, and meet people.
Yeah, definitely valuable.
No.
Go ahead. So you have boost your LinkedIn profile?
Yes, LinkedIn is huge. LinkedIn is huge right now. People don't even like look at the resumes. Like that's an old stuff. So it's all LinkedIn and GitHub, right? Especially for us developers, software engineers. So like if someone has a private LinkedIn profile or the information is hidden or it's just had the name and the title, I mean, shame on you. You should just go and update it right now. Put all the bullet points, ask your co-workers and colleagues to recommend you and vice versa, recommend them. I mean, that's the 2015 resume, the LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. I can see that being really valuable for people just getting started.
Yeah, for sure.
And also established people, right?
I don't know. I've never looked at someone's LinkedIn once they're already established because I know them through other means.
So like the first thing when we're recruiting when I'm interviewing and just our recruiter send the LinkedIn instead of like resume is not even that important. So that's my point.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, another
Yeah.
quick hack about LinkedIn profiles and resumes. There are tons of MOOCs, massive open online courses that are free. You can take them anywhere, and it's a great way to learn about like cryptography or artificial intelligence, stuff like that. And they look great on your profile as well.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
interesting. I've definitely gone by and tried to do a better job on my LinkedIn profile and put some more information and keep it updated. And in fact, I've had some friends that they actually some university classes go over how to create your LinkedIn profile better in some of the business classes because yeah, I think it's definitely important. Yeah, so yeah, and take some on. You mentioned taking some online open courses, MOOCs. I know that some universities have stopped providing them, but I guess the big ones still do, and you can always take those and just level up your skills, I suppose, like you're mentioning.
Yeah, Georgia Tech had the master's degree for $8,000. You can get uh, master of science in computer science, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard like those massive online schools though, you get a million people enrolling on each one of those courses, but only like 5% actually finish them.
Well, it's
Yeah.
because the amount of effort required for signing up is extremely low. Like I've signed up for 20 and I've finished maybe one. And I'm a
I think I've
person who
signed up.
generally completes things.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. I've signed up for a few and didn't complete them, but definitely worth looking into. So
Yeah.
we'll round up the interview here. Do you have, speaking of which, if you get your profile ready, if you're going to a job interview, you're interviewing for a technical job, do you have any tips for people um, who are looking, let's say they have some experience and they're looking to interview for a technical job?
That's a great question. Most people think that if they are good developers, then the interview will come naturally. Unfortunately, that's far from the truth. The interview skill is a skill in itself, which is very, very different from the actual skills that you use for web development or software engineering. Especially in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, you might get asked questions about data algorithms, about binary trees, about searches, about all kinds of computer science stuff, which 99% of us we don't use, especially in web development. We don't use it unless maybe if you work in NASA or SpaceX. So, so there are good resources, free GitHub repositories, also books on how to prepare for interviews. So just spend
Well,
like 2 weeks.
I'd circle back to what we were saying about publishing blog posts and screencasts because interviewing isn't easy if you're good at your job. Interviewing is easy if the interviewers know that you're good at your job. And so the way that bad interviewers think they can determine that is by giving you an algorithm problem. But it's much easier if they can just watch you thinking through a real problem in your blog or your screencast. And so that way you're pre-qualified.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know just writing a lot of blog posts and I do a few screencasts as well has made me understand the concepts a lot better. I just it kind of reminds me I went through an interview quite a few years ago for General Electric GE,
Mhm.
and it was literally from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. interview. I met with 10 different teams. I had lunch with them, and we whiteboarded. I got algorithm. I had to whiteboard different programming problems. I got these weird like quiz, or I guess these weird questions, like these riddles that I had to answer.
Mhm.
And this was right after I graduated from college, and it was awful. And then I realized, yeah, I should probably have taken 2 weeks to study everything I know and practice all these problems, and
Exactly.
I would
What
have
what
probably done
Jeffrey
better.
said, I agree to some extent. It would be easy if they already know you. If you're a core contributor, let's say to Ember or Node.js, I mean that's pre-qualified, right? But sometimes you would still go and they know you and they would still ask those questions, which
Well, I
don't
think
know. Maybe
a couple
have to ask them.
presentations or a couple blog posts is enough to get you that much. Like it won't get, if you make like 5 blog posts, technical blog posts that get into detail on something you know, like that's not going to send people calling you and asking to hire you. But when you go in, then that certainly makes the interview process easier, assuming they're the type of company that does their research, which is probably the company you want to work for.
I would say have both. I would say take a couple of weeks, prepare for core data structures and algorithm, and also have good web presence and establish yourself as an expert.
All right.
And then one more tip I've heard too is I don't know if you guys listen to John Sonmez. He does another podcast about life skills for programmers, but he even recommends trying to find the interviewer or find people that work there to get your name in, so you're more of a referral than just a random person applying for the job. I guess that's more of a general tip than just a job tip.
Absolutely. If you have a good network, I mean, especially in San Francisco, it's such a small world. You start bumping into people. I live here only for years, but I already know people in other companies. It's very fluid. But don't go and like, oh, I want to work at Capital One, so I've heard about Azat. Don't go to like try to stalk people just to get the job. Establish the relationship ahead of time, like years before that. Go to meetups, go to events, go to conferences, like create those relationships before you need them. Because otherwise you're just like a annoying person, right?
Yeah.
You're just saying watch out for new friends you pick up in the week or two after this podcast goes out.
Well, I have a quick funny story. I guess not real funny, but it was sad. I worked at this place, and I go to meetups here in Reno, Nevada, where I live. So there was a web development programmer meetup. I met some guys, and there was an unemployed person there. And he kind of caught up a conversation with me, and he wanted to connect professionally. So he connected to my LinkedIn. Then he scanned through my LinkedIn profile, and I'm assuming he did this, and found out who my boss was. So he can message my boss to see if he can get an interview. And I felt like, I don't know if this was the right way he should have approached it. Definitely a little stalkerish at that point.
Yeah.
So then I went into LinkedIn and turned it off, so your friends' profiles don't show up. So people, if they see my profile, they can't see who I'm friends with.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
Yeah.
All right, Azat, I think we've covered a lot here. We kind of jumped around between some core programming concepts, a little bit about business, and some life hacks, some personal development skills. So thank you so much for doing this interview. Where can people reach you at?
On Twitter, it's AZAT_CO, Azat_co. And my email, hi@azat.co.
That's great. Oh, Jeff, do you have anything else to add? Or?
This has been great. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much, Azat.
Thank you, guys. And
All right, great meeting you.
go make it happen.
I will.
Definitely. All right, see ya.